Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 235 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is one of those fish that is kind of what we became known for in the beginning of talking about these rare and endangered fish. More recently we've been talking about more widespread fish that are not in trouble, but I kind of wanted to get back. It's about time that we talked about an endangered fish. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is, the Barrens Topminnow. Now, the Barrens Topminnow, or scientific name Fungulus julicea, again that's Fungulus julicea, is part of the family Fundulidae, which is the family of top minnows and North American killifish. Not a family that we've talked about a lot on the channel, but we have talked about a few killifish across the course of this time. So not only is it a rare fish, thought it would be a good one to kind of bring this family back into the forefront. Now, the Barrens Topminnow is only found in Tennessee, and even more so, it's only found in the Barrens Plateau in central Tennessee. So it is really a prime example of what some people would call an endemic fish. Now, it's important to note endemic does not necessarily mean rare, and depending on how broad scale you want to look at it, everything is endemic somewhere. You could easily say, oh, this species is endemic to the earth. Well, yes, of course. Endemic just means it's found there and only there. So you can go broad scale, but usually when people talk about endemic fish, endemic animals, they're usually talking about an animal or a fish that has a very small home range and is only found in a very small portion of the world. And this fish is obviously no exception. Found in the Barrens Plateau in central Tennessee, only in a few river drainages. It was found in a few other river drainages, still on the Barrens Plateau, but some of those populations have been extirpated. Now, they really seem to prefer heavily vegetated areas with high amounts of aquatic vegetation in kind of shallow, slower moving waters from spring heads. And that's when you start talking about fish, especially when you talk about rare and endangered fish, that type of environment is just perfect breeding grounds for a very rare and localized species. When you start talking about spring heads and areas with tons of springs, you usually start getting very rare and endemic fish all across the world, actually. And in fact, I want to say probably the rarest freshwater fish in the world are all associated with springs and not actually just associated with river. Springs are very, very important for numerous species. So yeah, there's a reason why springs are always so protected. But because of their environment, the aquatic vegetation actually seems to be the most limiting factor, not necessarily water quantity or water quality. Now, when you start talking about springfish, though, water quality, water quantity is always a factor. Just from what I saw, it seems more that you need plenty of aquatic vegetation for this fish to thrive. Now, this is a smaller fish, but it's actually kind of large in terms of killifish. It grows up to 9.8 centimeters, which is 3.9 inches, which I know seems very small, but in terms of killifish, that's actually kind of a big killie. Now, it is more of a top minnow than a killifish, and top minnows are usually around there, but usually when people think about killifish, they're thinking of things like least killifish or things like that may even get to an inch long. Or they think about killifish in aquariums, which are not always the best example of killifish. They even are killifish. Now, it has this very cylindrical body with this upturned mouth at the end. It's a little more terminal than other killifish, meaning that it's facing a little more forward. And its back is not quite as flat as a lot of other top minnows. So it's to me, it has a very kind of interesting body shape. Usually when I see top minnows, or I think of top minnows, I think of a very upturned mouth and a very flat back, because they're usually skating along the edge of the top of the water. This one might actually be a little more mid-column in terms of fundulus. So yeah, it's a pretty neat little characteristic. Rounded fins, that's almost a given in terms of all fundulus, with the anal and dorsal fins set very far back in the body, also rounded. Now, most of the time you're going to have them in this sort of coloration, kind of a darker grayish color with some spots. Even this one's a little more colorful than what you would probably normally see. But when they get to breeding, the males will actually become extremely iridescent with multiple colors of blues and greens. These orange spots will get brighter, and they'll even have yellow fins. And they'll actually also develop nuptial tubercles on the anal fin rays. Now, I looked and I scoured, and I could not find a picture of the nuptial tubercles. This one right here might be the beginnings. If you look here, looks like there might be some bumps, but I don't really see them. And I definitely couldn't find any with the yellow fins. It looks like the pectoral fins here are starting to yellow out, but it's got this beautiful iridescent blue outline. So yeah, if you can tell from these pictures, I mean, it's a beautiful fish. Oops, I just exited out of that picture. Absolutely beautiful fish. And kind of, I don't want to say unique in its coloration, but it doesn't get the credit that it deserves. This is not that well of a known fish. It's pretty well known in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because there's a ton of habitat conservation plans going into this. I should mention that this fish is only classified as endangered in 2019, I believe. Maybe it was 2016. So this is one of those fish that's a lot newer to the endangered species list. Now, like most other killifish, they most likely eat large amounts of insects and microcrustaceans. In most killifish, they'll use their upturned mouth to kind of skim the top of the water and pick out insects that fall on the surface of the water. Because of how this mouth is a little more terminal, I would imagine they are going around the vegetation and picking the aquatic insects off. They are still definitely going up and grabbing insects off the top of the water, but this one is probably also actively foraging throughout all the vegetation, which would make sense given that it's so heavily associated with aquatic vegetation. Now, in terms of reproduction, it actually has a very interesting reproductive strategy. The males will flare their fins and chase the females. That's common. That's not the interesting part. But they actually have, the females will only lay 1 to 6 eggs in filamentous algae or other submerged vegetation that look like very small air bubbles. And over the course of the breeding season, the female will lay more than 300 eggs over multiple spawning events. And it's not the only fish that spreads its eggs out over the course of an entire spawning season. That's not actually fairly common. What was interesting to me is that they'll lay 1 to 6 eggs in the algae. And when you think about it, that means that the female is spawning close to 50 times in a single season, which is a very good strategy to make sure that at least one, you're spreading your young out over a very large area, and it allows for a very good chance that at least some of them survive, because if a predator happens across these eggs or recognizes them, it's only going to eat a few of your eggs, versus if you laid all your eggs in a very large group, then with one predator, you could have all your eggs wiped out. So it's not necessarily unique in terms of what they're doing. It's actually the amount that they're doing it. I honestly don't know of any that do it like that, to do so few eggs, with the total amount equating to so much more. 50 spawning times is bizarre to me. It's very, very bizarre to me. And the eggs only gestate for about, not even gestate, they only stay for about 8 to 10 days before they hatch, and then the larva will actually stay very close to vegetative cover. It's only a few days after that, I believe, that they become juveniles. So it's a fairly quick life cycle, and I believe the Barrens Topminnow is a 5-year lifespan fish. Most Topminnows are not very long-lived. Don't necessarily quote me on that, but I seem to remember somewhere about 5 years is their maximum length. So truly a beautiful and unique fish. And the interesting fact we're going to end the video on is the thing that most struck to me was actually the specific epithet of the name, Juliissa, which a lot of people might assume that is named because, oh, the person who discovered it named it after his wife or something like that. And I would have, that's what I was thinking. But it was actually, the specific epithet was derived from the Cherokee words for watercress fish, because this species of fish is so heavily associated with aquatic vegetation, and they really seem to prefer the vegetation watercress, which is a wonderful plant for fish species. And I thought that was just a very good homage to the Cherokee Nation, which was very prevalent throughout the eastern United States. And it's basically a nice way of picking a beautiful name without kind of going to that normal, either I'm just going super descriptive like Ratibida columniflora, which is columniflora would be the specific epithet, and that just means column flower. Or you start going to like people's names. Granted, most of the time the names are well deserved, but I don't know, for some reason that was the most interesting fact about this video. It has so many habitat conservation plans, and I encourage you to go look at it. There's tons of efforts going in to preserve this fish, all of them well deserved. They've got a good handle on what they need to do, but for some reason I couldn't even explain it, but that specific epithet is what stuck to me as the most interesting fact about this fish. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Love seeing all the comments. If you'd like to support the channel, please click the link down below. It is by no means expected, but very much appreciated regardless. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and peace.